There's so many stories about the healing ministry of Jesus in the gospel, and within those stories, there's so many different ways that people express their need for healing. And then so many different ways that Jesus actually heals. The woman who touches his robes, the centurion who requests healing for his servant back home, the little girl who has died but Jesus wakes her up, Lazarus who's quite dead, his body has begun to decay and it stinks and there's a stench and Jesus calls him back from the grave, the blind man and Jesus spits on the dirt and makes mud and puts it on his eyes, lepers who he actually touches. In Luke 5, we read one such healing story of a person with leprosy, and he says these amazing words to Jesus, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Then Jesus touches him and says, "I am willing, be made clean." There's this kind of call and response to this healing ministry of Jesus, a sort of expression of need, some reaching out, or some asking or pleading, and then there's this sort of response of Jesus that is as varied as the people and their maladies, but always consistent in the message, yes, I'm willing, be made well. And it seems deeply personal and almost private at times. We run headlong into this story of Jesus healing the paralyzed man right after this other story in Luke 5. And we have to wrestle with that. And so here's these words from Luke 5:17 and on. On one of those days while he was teaching, Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting there who had come from every village of Galilee and Judea, and also from Jerusalem, and the Lord's power to heal was in him. Just then some men came carrying on a stretcher a man who was paralyzed. They tried to bring him in and set him before him, but since they could not find a way to bring him in because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and lowered him on the stretcher through the roof tiles into the middle of the crowd before Jesus. And then there's some back and forth about Jesus and the Pharisees, about forgiving sins and healing. And then Jesus turns back to the man lying on the stretcher and he says, "I tell you, get up, take your stretcher and go home." And immediately he got up before them, he picked up what he had been lying on and went home glorifying God. Then everyone was astounded and they were giving glory to God and they were filled with awe and said, "We have seen incredible things today." So what's absolutely fascinating about this story is the role of the community. Some of the community around Jesus actually gets in the way. They prevent this man and his friends from getting to Jesus. And some of the community, those who are friends with this paralyzed man, they get creative. They scale the house, they cut open the roof, they pull back the tiles, and they lower this man on a stretcher into the middle. From the margins to the middle and into the presence of Jesus. And then there's this man. And unlike the leper, there's actually no dialogue between Jesus and this man about his willingness to be healed. It's actually the faithful actions of these friends that Jesus marks as faith that leads to the healing of this man. Here's how it hit me today. Jesus is absolutely someone who heals. He's a healer and a physician of our minds, of our bodies, of our hearts, of our souls. He's capable of healing all of the fracture and all of our maladies and all that separates us from God and from meaningful community. And there's a call and response here. We reach out to Jesus, asking if he's willing. But then there's also this communal dynamic. Healing doesn't happen in a vacuum or in a void. It happens in community. And sometimes the communities get in the way of Jesus' healing. They unknowingly block or exclude. And then there's also these friends in community who help people move from the margins to the middle. And Jesus honors these people too and counts it as faith. So I wonder, what connections do we need to make with elevation on this story as we reflect? How can we fall into patterns of getting in the way? How can we be like those friends who cut open the roof, who dismantle the religious system to help people get connected to Jesus as Lord, as friend, as healer? And for each of us personally, the question for Jesus isn't, are you able, but are you willing?